So, Paul Quigley, CEO and co-founder of NewsWhip. You're very welcome to Limerick and Startup Grind.
Thanks, Pat.
Great to have you here. So, before we hear the really interesting story of NewsWhip and the whole progression to where you are now, I'm just going to kick off with a kind of a wordplay game. Jobs or gates?
Gigs.
Times or Indo?
Times.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Snapchat or WhatsApp?
WhatsApp.
Bounty or Mars?
Mars. Who likes Bounty?
Simpsons or Family Guy?
Family Guy.
Giants or Jets?
Giants.
Huffington Post or Guardian?
Guardian.
Galway or Cork?
Galway.
iOS or Android?
iOS.
Twitter or Facebook?
Probably Facebook.
Okay. It's good to get out of the way, you know?
Yeah.
Okay.
I hope this has been... Twitter, I like you too. You're really important.
Cork will never forgive you.
So we'll work it out, Cork.
We kind of have the measure of you now.
Let's wrap up.
So before we speak about NewsWhip, just tell us a bit about yourself. You're from Limerick. I went to school here.
Yeah, so I went to school in Ard Scoil Reach, just up the road.
You and Paul O'Connell?
Yeah, we sat together, I think, for a few of our Leaving Cert classes,
Okay.
actually. Yeah.
Same age?
Same age. He's 2 weeks older than me.
Wow. And, you know, did you have interest in technology, in news, journalism? Was there any early indicators of what you would end up doing?
So yeah, actually in transition year, my project, you could do a transition year project, which was an excuse, I thought, to make some money. So I started a local newspaper called the Castletroy Times.
Excellent.
The Limerick Post model, you know, get a load of ads in it and give it out for free. And that way you don't have to sell it to anyone, so if everyone thinks it's crap, it doesn't matter, you've sold the ads already. So I started it off when I was 15, lost money in issue 1 and started making money on issue 2, so it was a good project.
Second iteration?
Yeah, exactly. And you know, it's just like startups, you got to go down for a while before you go up, you got to lose some
Excellent.
money.
So you showed early tendencies towards entrepreneurism.
Yeah, and then I wanted to, I thought journalism would be a great thing to study, but my parents didn't think that would be a great thing for me to study.
Okay.
So they said engineering, law, medicine, one of the, you know, science, something more proper. So started in UL doing mechanical engineering, dropped out within 3 months. Engineering was tough going for me. I thought I loved it, did honours maths, did applied maths, all of that stuff, but then it's, you know, it was a 40-hour week almost, and I kind of wanted to go to college so I'd look like I was doing something proper and I could start a business on the side. But there was no time to do any of that with mechanical engineering.
So in time-honoured tradition of Branson and Jobs and stuff, you dropped out of college. So that was a good start.
A lot of less famous people too.
Right. And so you went on then to Trinity, right?
Yeah, so I dropped out at Christmas. I went to live in France for a while. I had a ticket over anyway for a week. And then with use-it tickets, you used to be able to change the date without any penalties. So I just changed it to August in January and stayed over there. Worked in Disneyland, worked in a bar, pulled golf balls out of a lake at night and sold them in a golf shop. Various bits and pieces, and then I went off to study law and become more proper.
Okay. What made the change from collecting golf balls to studying law?
Well, I decided to apply for law when I was doing engineering, and I saw how much fun and how much easier it looked to do a humanities degree when I compared my workload with other people's workloads. And I did a minor elective, which you can do in UL, which is a great thing. I did a minor elective in law, and that was the course I enjoyed the most, so I thought, okay, I'll go and do that. And having a little bit of engineering and a bit of a sciencey, little bit of training that way was really useful in law, because a lot of it's really woolly. It's people who did history and English for their leaving certs, and they write these long waffly sentences, and in the end good lawyers are really clinical thinkers, so having a bit of engineering and maths background was actually really useful in law.
That's an interesting insight. And you qualified in law?
Yeah, I didn't try to practice in Ireland, so I was doing the law degree. I just thought, this is fun, I'll come up with a business idea. But then I got kind of goal oriented a bit, and I started studying for exams and did a year abroad in Finland. And then I heard that they paid lawyers really well in New York, and I also heard that you could do the New York bar if you had an Irish law degree, and that was kind of enough to set my sights on New York City.
Excellent.
To go and be a lawyer there.
So you were practice litigation law there, is that right?
Yeah, I started applying for firms from when I was there. I was in Trinity, I did a postgrad for a year. Like, I heard that you had to apply with like fancy paper, so I got fancy paper. I got like letter size instead of A4 size, so it would look normal to them, and like just wrote letters to law firms that had Irish partners in them. And eventually that ended up paying off. I got a summer associateship in a place called Paul Weiss, one of the big litigation firms. I read the brochure in the reception area, which is really useful because then they can talk about all the cases that they're really proud of with the partners there. And they thought I really knew my shit then, so they gave me an offer.
So how long did you work there for?
I spent a summer at Paul Weiss, did a master's in international law at NYU because I was getting idealistic and kind of save the worldy. But then got an offer from another big firm and went there to practice. And I was at Simpson Thacher for 4 years, and then at another firm called Freshfields for a year. So 5 years of lawyering.
Right. What happened? Everything was going great. What made you think of giving it all up for the startup world?
Well, it's funny. Like some aspects of law, like if you're in the big city, you're being paid lots of money, and you're spending it all again, but you feel good because you're getting the money in the first place. And everything seems to involve $1 billion. You know, I was involved in big litigations, really big transactions and things. But when you analyze what you're actually spending each day doing, you're at your desk, and if you actually I was spending about half my time interfacing with Microsoft Word, 20% of my time interfacing with email, 10% of time on the phone, and maybe 20%, you know, getting angry with paralegals because they didn't photocopy something right or something. Like it was the actual functional stuff. There was big numbers involved, and it sounded prestigious, and people were really proud of these big cases we were working on, but it was pretty boring work most of the time. And they spent a lot of time in law really sweating the details, like trying to make something so perfect, especially in a fancy US firm. And you don't get to just focus on the punchy, important stuff. And if you watch any of those TV shows with American lawyers, it looks like they're straight into court. Like, client walks in the door, that afternoon they're in court. You're in court a year and a half, 2 years later, after exchanging piles of documents with each other and loads of motions.
So it's not like The Good Wife?
It's not like The Good Wife, that's the problem. If it was like The Good Wife, I might still be doing it.
Okay, and so it started making you think of an alternative route to...
Yeah, there's also the hours are outside of your control. I billed 14 or 18 hours on the day I was turning 30, which was a Saturday. So I was in the office at midnight, and some of my friends called around, and they called me downstairs, and they had a bottle of champagne and a birthday cake. So we had that for 10 minutes, and then I went back into the office. So you don't have a lot of control over your life sometimes, and that didn't suit me very well, eventually.
What was the next move, or what were you thinking?
Well, I used to, like a lot of slightly bored white-collar workers, like read the internet a lot, and spent a lot of time reading sites like the Huffington Post and Gawker, and I saw that there was no site like that in Ireland.
Research, right?
Yeah. Now this is before the Journal, before Broadsheet, before everyone redid their websites so they were a bit more readable, and I realised there was nowhere you could actually see what's going on in Ireland today. There was no website. Like, took ages to update the Irish Times website. RTE's website seemed really shallow to me, really short articles that didn't say anything. So I thought, let's bring that back to Ireland, and then bring it to the UK and like create a new news brand called NewsWhip that will be this edgy, cool picture of what's really happening each day.
Content generation.
Content generation.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
So when I moved back, it was to start up a new news website, and I moved back in 2010 to do that. So quit big law. The second firm I was at was really, really pressurized. It's a place where I was working a lot of hours, so I just thought, I can go to another firm or I can do something completely different. Problem with doing something completely different is you may as well not have bothered do the law degree, not have bothered spend 5 hours getting all this experience. You're kind of getting all the stuff you've been doing with your life and throwing it on a trash heap. Which is what I thought I was doing, but the reality is there was a lot of useful stuff you pick up. There's a lot of useful stuff you pick up, really, I think, doing anything and trying to do it well. And it's certainly, years later when I was going back to the States, you know, having experience, just not being intimidated. Like, Irish graduates are as good as the Harvardies and the Yaleys who I was interacting with in the big fancy law firms, so I thought, oh hey, we can sell to these guys too, there's no reason why we can't do that. So it's good for confidence. And, you know, I guess knowing that there isn't any weird shit that you don't know, that like, these are normal people, you can deal with them just like you can deal with people here.
Okay. And so you're back in Dublin,
yeah,
beginning a startup. That transition from corporate life, probably earning really good money, nice, living in New York, suddenly you're back in Dublin, broke after a while, I suppose?
I'd saved up some money. I think anyone if you're going to do some dream chasing, have a few months worth in the bank. That made a big difference. I think if I'd been right onto the bread line when I got back to Dublin, I would have had a breakdown.
A dream chasing fund.
Yeah, so a little bit of a dream chasing fund was helpful. So sure, I was back, I wasn't making any money. Started up the website, got some freelancers to come aboard, tried to say, look, we want to write like these really punchy stuff. We want to say why something happened, not just the opposition said this, the government said that. It's like, what actually happened? Let's get to the meat of it. And at the same time, the journal launched, which kind of ate some of the pie because that was a good place to see what's going on each day. They were doing a good job of aggregating the news. So that was kind of part of what I wanted to do. John Ryan launched Broadsheet, which is this great satirical site, and that was part of what I wanted to do. So I was like, okay, we've still got this little bit of the pie, but it's not as good. And now we're suddenly competing with these other new media guys for this really crappy prize, which is this small market, really, in like international media terms. You know, you're looking at 4 million people. You're never going to make that much money anyway. At the time, the total amount of digital ad spend in Ireland was about 90 million euros, with Google and Facebook taking the vast majority, and everyone else fighting it out for the rest. And that's not a big market. I didn't know anyone, so you know, we were getting. You'd have a hit story, you'd get 20,000 visits, and it would earn you €8. So, okay. You know, it's not. Something had to give. Something had to give. Talked to some people about financing it. Some people liked the brand, liked what we did in the first few months. Thought about bringing it to the UK, a bigger market. But at the same time, we'd installed those little Facebook and Twitter and like buttons on the side of the stories. And I saw in the newsroom the journalists were fascinated with the instant feedback you got from it. And it was kind of public instant feedback. Which stories are getting viral? Which ones are being shared? And the other thing that occurred to me is there's already loads of stuff on the internet. And, all right, the journal does an okay job of it. I think we could do slightly better, but is it really worth it? Isn't it better to do something else with all the stuff that's already on the internet? Someone said to me the most interesting companies like Google and Facebook, they create new pipes instead of just making kind of more stuff to put there. Okay. And then I went to the Web Summit that year. It was smaller then. It was in the basement of the Irish Accountancy Society. So there were all these, Paddy had all these inspiring people along, and rather than try and pitch anything, I just sat there and listened for a day. That was the first Web Summit, right? It might have been the first, maybe the first or second. And these guys all just talked about building these big technology companies, and that seemed much more interesting. So I always navigated websites, but I pictured the most liked and most shared stories anyway. So I said, well, why do I have to go to multiple websites? Why can't I get all the stories in Ireland and make a most shared box for all of them? And maybe make it so we get all the sports stories and put them in one place, so I can see what are the most shared sports stories in Ireland today. And I thought that might be a good interface for finding cool stuff that you wouldn't otherwise find. So you pivoted, basically? Pivoted completely. The freelancers were on a contract with me, so we kind of pared down the hours, shuttered down the website, and I started playing around with the Facebook API. I can't code, but I could send in queries. And I saw that, I found an obscure old Irish Times article, and I liked it. And just before I liked it, I checked how many likes it had, and right after I liked it, I checked how many likes it had in the API, and it updated instantly. So I said, okay, wow, that's really good data. So it didn't wait an hour and then update, it updates immediately. So what if we start firing in thousands of URLs and seeing which stories are getting traction and momentum. So I drew up a schematic for how it would work, and with my last bit of savings, I was going to hire through an outsourcing platform called Odesk, people in Siberia for $10 an hour to build it, because I couldn't build it. But at the Web Summit they said, you can't outsource your core tech. You need to have technical co-founders. You can't just have an idea and get some people to build it and then it will be right. So thankfully I've met Andrew Mullaney, my co-founder at that point. So I kind of pitched the idea to him and he said, yeah, let's go build it. And he was doing Easy Deals, which is a deals-based company at the time, and the deal space was not working out as well as everyone expected. So he was ready to jump in.
Okay.
And off we went, yeah.
So how significant was it having a co-founder with you in terms of being able to bounce ideas off each other? Obviously he brought the technical skills that you weren't as strong on.
Yeah, I wasn't as good at, I was the everything else, and he was going to be the engineer building it.
You had the vision.
Yeah, the vision. I mean, I had the plan and the idea, and I kind of thought this is a great way of arranging information and this should be useful for people. Didn't quite see where it would go yet though. Just had the idea that this seems like something useful. Let's build it and see what happens.
But the dynamics of a co-founder, was that immediately helpful or was it difficult to adjust?
Oh, it was both. It was difficult to adjust right away because you're your own person. You've your idea of how things should look and how they should be. So I'd say a lot of early stage companies don't survive co-founders falling out and difficulties there. But me and Andrew were patient with each other, and we were often butted heads on product, on branding, where to focus our attention, but we got it built and we kept moving and kind of overcame any early disagreements.
Okay, so NewsWhip then became this using algorithms to monitor social activity, the latest breaking news, gathering that, so you knew this was interesting. It had to be quite quick, I guess, to make it valuable, yeah? Yeah,
we had to do it quickly. And at the time, like nowadays, NewsWhip is a software as a service company. We sell to news companies, brands. Taylor Swift became a customer last week. Law firms even actually buy our stuff now, and very satisfyingly, one of the law firms I used to work at is now a customer of NewsWhip. But at the time, we didn't even have any idea of turning this into a business. We just thought, put this up on the internet, everyone will come. And then, it's like the underwear gnomes, if you know what the underwear gnomes are. But everyone will come, then something, and then profit. We kind of just thought, loads of people will come to our website, maybe we'll serve them ads or something. But
you have to figure out the something.
Yeah, we had to figure out the something. So,
So I get that sort of PR houses or advertising agencies or newspaper publications or online publications would find it useful to know exactly what's popular, and maybe that would inform their editorial slant. But why would Taylor Swift use you, for example?
Yeah, to fast forward to
by the way,
what it is now. So we just put this most shared box up, and it was very simple. Nowadays, it's gone on a lot. Like I should explain maybe the little transition to what it is now. Like we went on Launchpad, this accelerator. They beat us up a bit. They said, you don't really have a business here, you've got a technology.
That's in NDRC, right?
NDRC in Dublin. But it was getting traction. Loads of people were going to this website, and BBC did even a segment on us, and we got great, hey, this is a cool idea. And everyone agreed this is a cool idea, but there wasn't a business. And then we realized journalists were using us to figure out which stories they should write. So we said, okay, what if we do a turbocharged version of this with way more filters, so you can zero in on keywords, or you can see what's trending really super early. And we build an algorithm around that, and we actually sell that as a service. So
is that the Spike tool?
That's the Spike tool. So that's the core business for us. So we got building that. We got a bit of seed funding again because people liked the idea. We got 150,000 euros or so in. We could hire 1 or 2 people, a bit of runway. And we built Spike. And we kept the consumer thing going because we always thought one day we'll be discovered by the internet and we'll be a big success. And we built this Spike tool, which is much more powerful. Nowadays with Spike, you can go in and you can say, I want to know, what's trending now in Canadian tar sands, or what's trending now in really specific things like cashless payments or stuff that brands and big corporates care about. And we give them really granular data, like you can see a little graph of how a story is spreading, whether it's flatlining or are still moving, and they can see who's tweeting it, and they can see all this information about. We take in, I think, hundreds of millions of data points every day now, and we do 30 languages and.
How does it differ
much
from
bigger thing.
reputation management tools like, is it Radian 6?
Radian 6, so we operate in this kind of noisy space because we do social and content, and there's social media monitoring, which is, Brandwatch or Radian 6. So they're monitoring the Twitter fire hose for like people saying, I don't know, Pepsi is crap, Pepsi sucks, and sentiment negative, oh no, ring the alarm bells. We're
the guys who choose Mars over Bounty or whatever.
yeah. Someone has been alerted already in Bounty HQ. We're getting dissed in Limerick. Take that guy out. So we, how we're different is we monitor the open web as well. So all the stories that appear online, we run full text, we get the authorship, and it's like arranging everything that's happening on the internet, not just what's happening in Twitter or what's happening in Facebook, but everything that's happening online to see what's getting traction. So it's not just limited to social media, it's getting stuff from everywhere to see what's getting big.
Okay, right, that clarifies that, yeah. So Spike then started to work?
Yeah, I mean,
we put charging for it?
We put up a paywall, it barely worked. We had, at that stage, we'd advertised it as like, we wanted to get a load of users registered, so we said, hey, try it now, it'll be free for ... We thought, get a load of registered users, a conversion rate of those registered users, and then profit. So what happened was we'd attracted loads of news consumers, people from like Gizmo's freeware, like thousands of people signed up. So we had this huge user base, and we were like, great, let's put up the paywall, and they'd all start paying us. Everyone just was outraged. And we managed to convert, I'd say, 3 customers maybe. But they were real journalist customers. We converted USA Today. So Bang is a great national news brand in the US. They started paying and using us. The Blaze, which is more right-wing, it's owned by Glenn Beck. It's a right-wing publication in the US. And then Think Progress, which is a left-wing one. They're with the Center for American Progress.
Bit of balance.
And one or two kind of eccentric guys from Silicon Valley who just loved Spike. Just regular consumers were willing to pay for it.
Okay.
And so then it was like, okay, we've got a few customers.
Monthly subscription?
Monthly subscriptions, so we used Stripe. At the time, Stripe wasn't in Ireland, so we had to pretend we were an American company. From working in the States, I still had a social security number, so we were able to kind of get them. We got on the phone and got an employment registration number from the federal government, and more or less said, yeah, here's a US address as well, and used my address, and it worked out. So then we were able to process payments.
Another Limerick connection?
Yeah, and if John and Patrick ever see this, no, we're all official now. We just needed your beautiful payments platform at a difficult moment.
Excellent. Okay, so from there, then you were beginning to create a little bit of revenue. So you were doing something sort of that was working.
Yeah, but the technology was still a bit half-baked. It was breaking half the time. Then we had a kind of a year where we were trying to raise money, and it didn't get major traction really. We had those 4 people. We were really happy if someone subscribed at $39 a month. We were all like, yay, high fives, another customer. We got 3 this month. So,
good to hear the real startup story, you know?
Yeah, and it took a while because the product was clunky then, and we hadn't figured out how to sell it. Like, if you knew it existed, maybe you'd come in, but there was no virality. It's not like Dropbox where, get more space if you share it with your friends. People were protective. In fact, they were secretive about using Spike because this is our secret tool for knowing what's trending ahead of all the other journalists who want to compete with for eyeballs today, so I'm not going to tell them. So we had
anti-virality. So was it like independent journalists, a lot of it, rather than big corporations?
It was mainly corporates, yeah.
Corporates, okay.
And then we kind of had to figure out how to sell it as the next thing. So one of the unique things we had was cool data. So we said, okay, maybe we need to start blogging and publishing, and that picked up steam really quickly. We published the most shared publishers in the US. Then we realized we had actually a pretty unique data set. No one else had that data. No one else could say who were the most shared publishers, because no one else was crawling all the websites, getting every single thing published in a given month, ramming it all against the APIs and getting total numbers. So we were like, cool, all right, let's start publishing this and turn it into a thing. And that got people in, and then we did that usual annoying capture that you get on blogs now with the subscribe to our newsletter and then try out our free tool or try a free trial of our paid tool. And then we doubled our prices as well, which was great, made no difference to, and we actually realized a lot of the lower price customers were churning, so we doubled our prices again. And it was fine, the guys at Money stayed on. Software pricing is complex, but if in doubt, just double your prices.
So do you still have a freemium model?
We don't anymore, and the remaining bits and pieces of NewsWhip that are free will probably be retired very soon. We've kind of moved, we realized we want people who really commit to using it, and if they commit to using it, it saves journalists hours a day. It's actually a really valuable tool.
So if anyone wants to sign up for it, do it now, and if it's the same thing, say Paul said it was okay.
We always do all kinds of side favors and stuff like that, like for people from hometowns.
Okay.
But yeah, we're getting rid of the free. But like moving was a very good thing to move up market and to invest loads more, like getting machine learning in. Like all of that money we got in, it's not like we went out on the piss with it. We reinvested it straight back into the product, and it's paying out. The product's turning into something really good that's kind of worth that sticker price.
So Shane Lockton, Irish guy in New York, was one of your angel investors?
He was one of the first investors.
One of the first investors, okay. So what was the first round? Is that public?
The first round was about 150,000. It was from Shane and from Hal Phillip, who's another angel, through his investment fund.
And what difference did that make? I mean, sometimes you hear people going to a lot of trouble getting money, and then when they get it, they don't really know what to do with it. Had you a plan of exactly what you're going to do with it?
We were still very product focused. We knew we needed to do a lot more building, so it was hire an engineer, spend it on, we couldn't afford to hire a designer, but we could get an outside designer to work closely with us, who gave us a good rate, guy based in Brooklyn and New York, and that worked out well. So we had ways to spend the money for sure.
Building the tech. And what about the whole sales thing if you're selling if it's an enterprise sale, you're looking at the States, do you not need boots in the ground early to really start scaling?
Well, that was the next big lesson. It wasn't necessarily boots on the ground, but it's the fact that you need to sell it. So when people come in to start the free trial, we just sat back to see, will they convert? But what you have to do, now we know, and now there's maybe 1 million blog posts on it, but we didn't know then. What you need is a sales guy who can contact them, email them, say, hey, during your trial, why don't I show you around the product? Because you know all the little bits and pieces of your product, and you think everyone else will know them too, but they don't have a clue. Most of these guys were coming and try out Spike, didn't really know how to use it. And we're cycling right out again. Like half of our users were having one session and they were gone. Other people would end their free trial and then sign up with another dummy email address. We'd never get them converted. And so we realized actually we need to do that. So I started doing that myself. I started contacting people en masse. When they sign up, they get an email from me offering them a demo. And since then we've got more sophisticated. We send multiple emails. We work on the cadence of our emails, like how often you send them. And we've got like people whose only job it is to set up training sessions. And then we have people whose only job it is to give training sessions. And then after someone converts and becomes a customer, we have people whose only job it is to keep them educated and keep them happy.
Is that like live webinars or one-to-ones? One-to-ones,
because you get to learn about customers' needs then. Like the webinar idea is okay. I did a webinar once, but there's dynamics to every communication. If you do a webinar and if people can't talk and they don't know who else is there, you're just kind of talking into the cosmos. You can see that there's people in this webinar and you're just like blah, blah, blah. Hope everyone can hear me. And you're not learning about their needs. You're not able to say, oh, you're so-and-so. Here's how another newspaper has used it. So it's a great sales method. Like educating people on your thing is a great way to sell it.
And I suppose they'll be more open speaking to them one-to-one than in a group situation where they might be...
Yeah, but there might be other competitors there.
Yeah.
So if you have the Guardian and the Daily Mail on the line, they're not going to want to even talk to each other. They probably both actively dislike that the other one is there. Yeah, so you're better off doing it one-to-one. And because we increased our pricing, we couldn't do that at $39 a month, but when we increased our pricing, we can afford to pay sales guys to do this stuff.
Well, it's pretty good for them getting a one-to-one personal service like that too.
But if you can give someone one really good session, maybe two, and if they're in an organization where you might sell more seats over time, then it's worth it. It's always worth it. Because the other beautiful thing of our business is it's recurring revenue. It's a subscription business. So at the end of February, we'll have everyone who was there at the start of February paying us again you know, if it's monthly or maybe they paid annually in advance, but they're all there again. So you start each month with everything you had the last month plus anything else you were able to sell. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful business model, because otherwise you start each month with zero in a lot of businesses, and it's great to start each month with all the revenue from the last month, unless you lost people.
What was the next stage and the next wave of growth?
So we got seed funding in 2013. We were able to hire our own designer then. Took him a while to get aboard. He was getting married and stuff. We hired a bit more of a team together and sort of figuring out how to sell it. And then at the start of 2014, that's when the revenue really started kicking in and growing up, because we got more of it right. The product was pretty good at this stage. We knew who'd be using it. It was still an inbound model. We weren't spending any money on outbound. We were publishing what we had. A good blogger, guy right out of UL journalism actually, and just made him the editor-in-chief of our blog. He came in as an intern, and within a few months he was promoted. And you know, he writes really good blog posts. He's turned into a thought leader now. He's invited to speak. He's been invited to speak at the New York Times, at the BBC in Germany, because he has all this data and insight into how things get shared.
You have an awesome blog. Did that make a big difference?
Yeah.
Is it like an editorial? Is it projecting your sort of editorial on the business? Does it give you a voice?
A little bit. Like, we've got a position which is that the crowd isn't dumb, that if you look at what's being shared, it's a good signal. Now, of course, sometimes stupid shit goes viral and it can get more viral than other things, but if you look at the stories on a publication that you like and you trust the rest of the audience of that publication, they'll give a good signal of what stories are good there. And you know, it's really exciting time as well, because you didn't know which articles in the newspaper were the most read when it was a paper. And to share it was a lot of effort. You had to cut it out and put it in the mail or bring it into work the next day or something. And now you can flick it around really easily, and we think that's really good. And humans have a lot more control of media distribution and what gets shared. It used to be it just got pumped into your living room and through the TV or into your hand in the newspaper, this finished thing. And now we get to influence what gets spread around to our friends. And so our position is that's generally a good thing and it's an interesting thing. So we write about that whole universe really, and a lot about the data, like what gets shared, what doesn't.
So it's interesting, like a lot of your audience are journalists, and then you've got a whole cohort of marketeers, I guess, yeah?
We've got a couple of, we've got most of our blog is journalism really, like.
But I mean your market, your customers.
Our customers, yeah, so it's 70% media still, and that would include, you know, Vogue or Elite Daily, like fashion publications, Mamas Latinas, which is a Hispanic parenting blog, right up to The Guardian, or China Daily, which is Chinese government's English language newspaper.
You have a number of governments, don't you?
A few government departments using us. 10 Downing Street use us. The US State Department, we don't ask them what they're doing. I've seen too many conspiracy theory TV shows. Okay. I don't want to know. It's like, oh, you know, but I like that, like, we think the NSA is watching us with all this fancy stuff, and now they're just using Spike.
So, I mean, do you see any trends, like, I mean, I'm just taking the comparison of the journalistic side of things and the marketing. And traditionally, I suppose, we would have thought that journalism is more ethical than marketing. But I guess now, because things are more transparent, do marketers need to get a little bit more sincere and sort of ethical in their approach?
Yeah, they need to get more authentic. And it's really hard. It's really hard, because they used to just be able to come up with a campaign and blast it at you during the TV ad break, and you had to watch it. And it's like some brand saying really insincere, crappy stuff to you, trying to get you to buy their stuff. And now, you know, they're on Twitter and Facebook. Now they have to, like, talk to everyone. And it's easy to be a human on social networks. It's harder to be a brand. It's quite hard to, you know, what can Bank of Ireland tweet about today that won't have everyone screaming at them? Sorry. But you know, it's hard to be a brand. It's a really good, if you're a challenger brand, like if you're a startup and it can be a bit plucky and people don't want to take you down a peg or two, it's great. Or, you know, even Reebok is a challenger brand because Nike is the big one, so they can probably take some risks and like have a bit more personality. But I think it's hard for them, and they need to learn, and they need to kind of join into a discourse now. Like, one brand that's doing it pretty well is MasterCard. They're customers of ours. They want to talk about cashless payments. They want to talk about global cities of the future and financial inclusion, which is like access to financial services. It's a big thing in India and some emerging markets. So they tweet about that, they blog about it, you know, and it gives them, aside from the regular marketing campaign for everything else is MasterCard, they've got some other real personality and something they can talk about and show leadership in, and it's good internally and externally for them to have that.
They're using your intelligence, the intelligence they gather from your tool to put together whatever their policy is.
There's a second tool as well now. So Spike is this real time what's happening now, but we started storing everything, and now you can go back in time and you can see, if you're a brand and you want to see, all right, when did Halloween stories start trending last year? Which Halloween stories were the big one because Halloween is coming, and you want to do some brand stuff, like some life hacks about how to do a pumpkin better, or if you're a Starbucks, you want to know, when do people start sharing stories about pumpkin spiced lattes? Or you might want to know, you know, what kind of content do Starbucks audiences share, what worked last year, what works for competitor brands. So now we've got this whole like DNA, we've got billions of URLs indexed, and you can see exactly, all right, what stories are the ones that people have been reacting to historically. So then they use that for their planning, and then they use Spike for monitoring the real time and what's happening now.
So what trends do you see in the way we consume news over the last few years? What changes have you seen? I guess the social element of it online is moving all the time.
Yeah. I like trying, I don't think I'm any better placed to answer that than anyone else in the room. I think, like, I just try and watch myself and try and be aware of how I'm changing. Like, am I reading I got an iPhone 6 and it's just the screen size is just about right. I'm suddenly reading way more stuff on my phone and I'm like, that's interesting. I didn't do this with the 4 that I had before. Or, you know, and every time that Facebook does a little tweak or Twitter does a little tweak, I'm kind of watching, it's like, yeah, it's interesting, trying to see what they're doing. Because, and there'll be some changes this year. Facebook's going to push live really hard. They're going to try and get all of us live streaming stuff. Like, I'll be here live streaming while we're recording. You know.
Is that a reaction to Twitter's Periscope?
I don't know. They'd never admit that, certainly. It might be.
They're all watching each other, I suppose, aren't they, and seeing what's working.
I don't even. Does everyone? Like, I'm not periscoping all the time. Like, I don't know if it's one of those mass adoption things, but they do think it is in Facebook. They're working really hard there right now to have all the bandwidth and the capacity that we can all be like live streaming video to each other, which is a lot of data.
Okay.
So maybe that happens. I don't know.
We're going to have some Q&A very soon. Just before we finish up on it, that's really insightful. Could you give like three top tips for, say, if you were starting off 5 years ago with what you know now? Mm-hmm. What would be the main guiding tips you might give to a startup?
Yeah. So I think what really kept us going is we hadn't quite figured out the market or anything, but we built something useful at the start. And I think starting with something that's useful to someone will get you so much further, and it will open doors, and it will get people subscribing and talking to you.
To identify a problem?
Yeah. You know what's funny is we didn't even identify a problem, other than it's hard to find all the interesting stuff on the internet.
Okay.
Like, there's too much stuff, and I just want the interesting stuff. So maybe our problem was there's too much information, and that's what we come back to sometimes.
Well, that's a problem.
So that is a problem.
So you went to solve that problem. Okay.
I wanted to see where's the interesting stuff right now.
So you say have a clear vision of what you're solving?
No, I think you just have to do something interesting or build something useful. You don't have to always. We were scratching our own itch there, which is a great way to start a business. So I was like, I don't have to click all of these websites to find what's cool. I want it all in one place. So that's how it got started. But the fact that we had something kind of cool built, not just an idea, meant that that's how USA Today became a customer, and then we could like mention that name to the next 100 customers. But in order for them to come in the door, you need to have something built at the beginning. I don't think you can just go out with a deck. No one will believe you, and you won't believe yourself after a while.
Build something first before you start selling it, pushing it, or whatever. Okay.
Get something built.
Okay.
So get something built. I think next piece of advice would be that you can sell to anyone. I think the fact that you're based in Ireland, you should be aiming to sell to absolute top tier in any other country. It doesn't matter that you're here. The people in New York or San Francisco aren't any different. They just have more money, and you know, they're great customers. So I think you got to like be proud and get your thing built and expect to sell it to the top of the market. Ireland is not a very innovative market in our space, like in media and in advertising. There's a lot of relationships there already. We weren't going to break down those doors, but we were able to go to America and get it started there. And now, Communicorp use us, and Joe and her and others use us here. Sometimes you got to go abroad with your thing. Like we showed it to the Journal when we had it built, and they were like, "Nah, we don't need that." If we had gone with the Journal, we wouldn't have got anywhere with it, right?
Do you think sometimes
and the Irish Times, were like, "Nah, we don't need that."
Do you think sometimes Irish companies dismiss you because you're an Irish company?
No, I think they're not. The companies over in the US are bigger. They have more brain space. Maybe they're thinking strategically further down the line, and they were like, "Yeah, that'll save me time." I think the Irish solution is like, just work harder. You don't want to buy that thing if it's going to cost us $100 a month. You should work harder. But $100 a month, if you do it on a daily rate, it's like a cup of coffee. And if it saves you 2 hours, then it's a good buy. But I think we're too inclined sometimes to not buy those kind of solutions. And Americans are very inclined. As soon as you state the value prop, they'll be like, okay, that saves me 2 hours a day. Fine, let's buy it.
Okay, so number 2 is think global. Look at the US, UK, Europe, the rest of the world, right?
Yeah. What else? Actually, I thought about this before, but the one that really comes to mind is you got to enjoy the ride. Like even when I was bottoming out with NewsWhip version 1 wasn't working, I was still I let myself live my life, and the whole way along I still haven't put in the kind of hours I used to. You give yourself headspace so you can make good decisions. Like if you make bad decisions, it can cost you 6 months. So if you can make good decisions, work 9, all right, a little bit more. I probably work 9 hours a day, maybe 10 hours a day, but then that's it. And
that allows you to be creative and
but you got to enjoy the ride. You got to be like, I'm not in this so that Google buys us for $1 billion. I'm really enjoying building a team now. Like there's all these different stages in a startup, and now we've got a team, and I surveyed the team to say, what do you like about working at NewsWhip? And they were giving me all these great things, and I'm like, wow, that's our values. We're documenting that, and we're going to hire for other people who exhibit this stuff. And I couldn't even imagine that 2 years ago. So I'm enjoying it. I'm not just focused on the goal of an acquisition or an IPO or something. You've got to enjoy what you're doing along the way.
Brilliant. 3 wise tips.
Thanks.
So that's been amazing. Who'd like to first ask? Dan. So we've gone over the hour, guys. Just before we give Paul a big round of applause, I'd like to say thanks for coming, and we're trying to build a community here, so I really encourage you to come each month if you can. On the 31st of March, we have Austin Ryan, co-founder of AMCS, recently got 45 million funding, another Limerick company that a lot of people haven't heard about, so we're trying to amplify these stories, and so please encourage people to come along to this, and thanks again for coming, and a big round of applause for Paul Quigley.
Thanks, Pat. Thanks.